Hi everybody, welcome back to another video. In this video I want to answer your most frequently asked questions. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Question number 1. What were the hardest things to deal with on the bike? So speaking of the actual cycling part, I think weather was maybe the most or the hardest thing, just because the heat was a struggle sometimes. We were blessed with almost no rain days, which was amazing, but the heat I think was quite hard. But speaking of the journey that happened off the bike, I think the hardest part was finding a sleeping spot for every night. It takes a lot of planning. You need to plan ahead or be super spontaneous and just wild camp wherever you want, but then accept that this is just against the law in most of Europe. And well, I didn't like that. So we tried to plan ahead, and it took up a lot of time actually. And also, if you're traveling with someone else, you always need to make sure that the sleeping spot meets both of your expectations and you're both comfortable with that. That was kind of a struggle from time to time, especially since the campgrounds were super loud and we didn't get a lot of good sleep on there. Okay, question number 2. What's the most surprising lesson you learned along the journey? I think, to be honest, I've met so many people during a bike touring trip like we did, and yet everyone did it in their own way and with a completely different setup, with a completely different route, different bike, different everything. I feel like when I was preparing for this trip and I was watching YouTube videos and doing some research online, there's millions of channels that portray this perfect bike touring setup with super lightweight gear and wearing the same bicycle short for 6 months and don't even care about having another short with you to switch that from time to time, or I don't care, I don't know. But before starting the trip, I felt pressured to kind of meet the standard that most people choose to travel, I guess, travel by bike. But I met so many people doing it completely different than I did, and this kind of opened my eyes that none of us did it wrong or right. There are just so many ways of just following your own path. That's never wrong, you know? Like, if you prefer super lightweight gear and just have just 2 bags with two panniers with you, that's fine. But for example, I totally enjoyed the luxury of having a hammock with me or having a beach towel with me, whereas for others this was just super useless, and they were like, well, how stupid are you to bring a beach towel? I mean, are you on a vacation or what? And I was like, yeah man, I'm on a vacation, so I can bring whatever I want to. And this by no means meant that I was doing something wrong or they were doing something wrong. We're just both doing it our way. And there's also no need to fulfill a certain amount of kilometers per day. There's no need to fulfill anything really. Like, just do whatever you want. And I think might sound a bit cliche, but I really had this strong realization. Before, I kind of looked up to experts or people that always chose the hardest path, like cycling more than 100 kilometers per day, and just like those hard guys, you know? Just because I'm not cycling 100 kilometers per day does not mean that my journey isn't worth as much as theirs, if that makes sense. I don't know, maybe it doesn't make sense to other people, but that's how I feel. Question number 3. In hindsight, how well did you manage to pack? Do you think you over or underpacked? So Alex and I were traveling together, so we were sharing a lot of gear. I mean, we were sharing all our gear. Yeah, I think I had about 20 kilograms and he had 25 kilograms plus food. So that's not calculated within those numbers of gear that was mounted to our bike. So that includes the weight of the shield panniers, that includes the lock and stuff like that. For some people that's a super high number, but for us, as I said, just we enjoyed having the luxury of having a bit more stuff with us And especially since we were not that like crazy about the bike riding and just thought of this as a big adventure, and we wanted to have some days off where we could go to the beach or go do a hike or do something else than just being on the bike and riding. And we brought a bit more stuff than you would actually need. Something where I think we definitely overpacked is electronics. So I brought a lot of gear for filming. That's, for example, I brought a drone, power bank, stuff like that. And then also I had a pretty big sleeping bag. I just didn't want to spend more money on a sleeping bag that's a bit lighter, just because I didn't want to buy a new one. That didn't make sense to me, but it has a lot of volume. I mean, there were little bits and pieces where we could cut down, and we actually sent back we sent back a package after I think 4 weeks on the bike, and it was just random bits and pieces. In general, I mean, as always, bring less than you think you would actually need, because you don't need that much stuff. I definitely brought too much clothes, definitely. But on the same time, as I said, I just enjoyed the luxury of being able to have one pair of shorts that's always clean, and have a beach towel with me, have a summer dress with me, stuff like that. You obviously don't need a summer dress, but I just liked to have a summer dress. Okay, question number 4. How did you manage to take such a long amount of time off work? That question is very easy. I quit my job, and so did Alex. We had the idea in our minds to do a longer trip, travel for a longer time. So quitting our job was kind of necessary to do that, because when we started the trip, we actually didn't know when we would be back. We sold all of our belongings, we sold our car, we sold everything that we had. And in the end, we took about 6 months off. Now back in Germany, trying to fit back into normal life. So many people told me, oh, aren't you afraid to quit your job right now? But on the same time, I mean, you can always get a job back. But for me, it was just totally worth quitting and doing this trip, because it was definitely an adventure to remember. And people have asked me, like, aren't you worried about your retirement? How do you call that? Retirement fund, or the money that you receive when you're retired? I'm like, guys, I'm not even 30 years old. Who knows what happens within the next 40 years? No one can guarantee me that I will actually see a dime of that money, you know? So why limit my dreams and limit what I want right now just because I'm scared of what might happen in the very far future? So that didn't really make a lot of sense to me. Just talking about my personal opinion here. Question number 5. Which were your favorite and least favorite countries to cycle through? Giving you a rough overview, I cycled through Germany, France, Spain, Portugal, Greece, Albania, Montenegro, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, and Italy. Let's start with the best. So the best for me was France and I think Greece, both for very different reasons. So France, because perfect road infrastructure. It was just crazy. Like, you had a whole autobahn just for cyclists. That's crazy. That's super nice. We were cycling along the Atlantic coast, and I just love the ocean. France is a really nice country. People are super friendly. I loved the camping, the official campsites from the cities, like the camping municipal. And then Greece was, I mean, you don't have any cycling paths. You have a lot of wild dogs, which can make your life a bit hard. But people, like the car drivers, so drivers in general, are pretty respectful towards cyclists, which was amazing. Even if you're sharing the street with cars, you don't feel endangered at all, and you have this beautiful atmosphere around you, like the ocean, and then beautiful olive trees, and then you have all of that good food. That's also I mean, I'm a vegetarian, primarily vegan, plant-based vegetarian, this direction. Greece just makes it very easy for you. Offers a great variety of food, which is kind of a nice treat after a long day of cycling, you know? So that was pretty nice. And the worst, just from the cycling perspective, Portugal, honestly, because car drivers or drivers are just horrible. They actually want to kill you or whatever, I don't know. And campgrounds in Portugal are really insane. People are super loud and don't care about anything except for themselves on the campground. I mean, if they make a mess, they won't clean after it or something like this. So really didn't like the whole campground and cycling experience in Portugal. I know Portugal is a super nice country. I've been there 3 times already and I loved it every time. I mean, they have beautiful beaches and everything, but just as a cyclist, don't go to Portugal. Question number 6. How do you bathe and poop while camping? So for bathing, or for showering, we used the Rohloff water bag with a little shower adapter that you can attach it to the bag, and it actually works pretty well. It gives you a really nice shower. It's a black bag, so you can just expose it to the sun for, I don't know, an hour or so before wanting to take a shower, and then the water is pretty warm, which is super nice. And when we were wild camping, we just looked up on the map or like Maps.me or somewhere if there was a water source close by where we could fill up the water bag, or sometimes we even went to a gas station or something. We have I think 10-liter bag with us, and it was enough to shower for 2 people, and then we also did the dishes with that. I mean, obviously you have to save water, but if you're wild camping, I think that's like super nice. We never went to bed without showering, which was very nice. And then for the pooping, I mean, either there's a lot of stores or cafes or supermarkets or whatever that have public toilets where you can use them and wash your hands and everything properly. But yeah, I mean, there's also nature all around you usually, so yeah. Oh yeah, I got another question. Which tent did we use and if we liked that tent? So we used the Big Agnes Tiger Wall 3. Big Agnes is famous for their ultralight tents. I definitely wanted to buy a Big Agnes tent years ago already, but when we were prepping for this trip, it was finally time to get a tent. Now, the Big Agnes Blacktail is kind of a cheaper tent from Big Agnes. I think it retailed when we bought it for like below 300 euros, and it only weighs, I think, 2 kilograms. It's a 3-person tent, which means that it allows you to bring your valuable items and most of your gear actually inside of the tent, which is super nice, especially if you're wild camping and there are wild animals around. We had multiple cats and dogs peeing on our belongings. So if you're able to bring as much of your stuff with you in the tent, that's definitely a plus, at least for me. Yeah, I was super happy with the tent, would always go for it again. It did an amazing job, especially for the price that we paid. We've used it for 5 months now, and it only has a tiny little hole in the basement foil, like in the bottom, but that doesn't really matter that much, especially since we used it in combination with a ground sheet as well. Do you wish you had chosen a Rohloff hub? No, not really, just because Rohloff is typically very expensive, and for us it was our first bike tour and the bike was primarily a source of transportation, so I'm not crazy about bikes. For the trip that we did, and it was a 5-month trip, the setup that we had was completely sufficient, so there was no need for Rohloff. Would you consider bike touring in Southeast Asia, or do you think it would be too hot or too difficult? I would not consider bike touring in Southeast Asia, but that's just my very personal preference. So I know that some people did it and they loved it. Just for me, the weather is kind of tricky over there. Hotness is the one thing, but then also if it rains over there, it pours. Like it rains the whole day, but it's like a flood. I actually spent the last 6 weeks in Southeast Asia, and although it was supposed to be the dry season, it rained 95% of the time that I was there. I don't know if I was super unlucky that's a whole nother story. But it rained like crazy, and I could not imagine cycling in under these conditions. And then also camping, I think, is not a lot of fun over there just because of the animals. I mean, there are some dangerous wild animals, but the ones that would bug me are bugs. Like, there's so many animals that can crawl into your tent and make your life hard. And then also, I don't know, I think street conditions are horrible up there, and also traffic is like crazy. So for me, Southeast Asia is a really nice region, but not by bike. I don't think you have to force yourself riding the bike through every region in the world just because you can say, oh, I did that. Because in some regions it's just not fun. So don't force yourself into something like this. Okay, last question to end this Q&A. I think this will wrap it up quite nicely. Will you go together for another bike tour? I think so, yes. We will, like, Alex and I are both interested in countries like Hungary or Romania, or I'm also interested in Poland, or I don't know, just this, like, countries that are a bit east direction of from Germany. As I said, I'm trying to get back into normal life here in Germany. I'm trying to get a new job, so it will not be an adventure of a few months, but maybe like 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, which I think is also sufficient to have a good time on the bike. And then I would definitely do a lot of things different. I'm in the process of selling my old bike, and I want to build a bike that I like from scratch, so like kind of customize the bike. I would definitely go for a lightweight setup next time. So stay tuned for new bike touring vlogs on this channel. Maybe if you're new here on this channel, check out the previous videos that I posted about our bike touring trip through Europe. And yeah, I just want to thank everyone that has followed along the journey. It was a pleasure. It was just a super nice adventure. And if you're thinking about if you should start something like this, just go for it. Honestly, just if it's a 1-week trip, you don't need super fancy stuff, super expensive things, just try it. All right, well, I think that concludes this video. If you have any more questions, feel free to post them in the comment section below, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.